Hello, leavers and believers, and welcome back to Leaving Hillsong. My name's Tanya, and I am delighted that you have chosen to join us today. We are jumping straight in back to the middle of a conversation about an interview between former pastor Brian Houston from Hillsong and Andrew Bolt, a conservative news reading, one of those types. People here who, when I say conservative, is like really, really, yeah, doesn't have a lot of love to go around, our Andrew Bolt, but that's all right. He's got some love for Brian, and Yolandi and I were discussing this in part one. So it is rather a lively conversation. All trigger warnings apply as per usual, as per Hillsong. A lot of us chatting back and forth. We've known each other for quite some years now, so don't mind us. Grab your snacks, pull up a chair, pull up a couch, pull up a blankie, and settle in for part two of the Antichrist Vultures with Yolandi.
So yeah, I think for me personally, I have to think sometimes about Brian Houston and his family as well, because I'm so Christian and I need to think about them as people. Because my beef originally was not really with Brian and with Bobby as much as it was with the whole organization that they've set up and the way that it was managed. But it's usually from the top down. My biggest thing is when I look at the situation, I think that he acted really poorly, and I think his EQ is really low personally. I don't think his emotional intelligence is high. He might have a higher IQ because he's got a lot of charisma. But I don't think his EQ is that high. So when they're in that position of power, they don't want anything to corrupt that position of power. So, I mean, I don't know personally. I think obviously you've got to be, if it was me, I would immediately say, my father is a pedophile. He's not going to be at this church. Yeah, it actually reminds me of something, Anya. It reminds me of, I sat in Hillsong and there was a South African girl that I knew, and she had a video that was made about how her stepfather had repeatedly raped her. Or I don't know if you can use the word rape on Spotify and if you're putting it up there.
Yeah, we can.
But repeatedly molested and so forth, and how she was, how Brian had mentored her and Bobby had mentored her to go back to her stepfather and she forgave him, and it was this whole reconciliation thing. And I thought to myself in that moment that while it's beautiful that and from a Christian perspective, I believe that, wouldn't you go to the police and, tell the police that, look, my father raped me most of my life, my stepfather, he should be punished for that. Like in the sense of like, we want to forgive as Christians, but he should still be, as a Christian, the Bible still says that very clearly that the actions that we take, the things that we do, we should still stand, even in earth and in heaven, we should still, there should still be some form of justice. And that to me is a little
What,
bit
yeah,
like,
what, I mean, I know there's argument over this, but what about the old submit to the current authority as you would to God?
no, you won't do that over the Bible, because the Bible, that's wrong. That's false teaching from the church.
sure, but well, that's a Bible verse, and I understand, like if you
But the right authority, not the wrong authority. I mean, there's the right authority that will do the right thing, where they would go, if there is a systematic abuse happening, they'll immediately go, and there's good people that I know that are, in churches that would go, let's take this to the police immediately.
but I mean, you are not Brian Houston, and he's made that clear. And you naming your father, your father isn't the founder of Hillsong that you inherited a ministry from, and then turned into this international corporation. And you're, hey, why is everyone looking at me? I don't get it. So there's that. The thing I would like to point out is their insistence on this reconciliation and forgiveness thing. And we can take this argument up another time, but I just don't know that it's explicit in the Bible that I mean, I had a little look. There's different
There
it-
is
there's versions, but Jesus said if your brother comes to you and asks you for forgiveness, not just go around getting ready for the next abuser to do what they want because you're just going to forgive anything that happens. Like it's messy, man. No, it's a tool that they use, not know it you. It's a tool that they use repeatedly. You're the person with unforgiveness, not
But
putting.
that's manipulation and gaslighting from a human being. That's not what the word of God says. I mean, you can use any kind of text. I can go take a fictional book and I can use text in a fictional book if someone believes really highly in it, like Harry Potter, which some people do, and they worship that book. And you can take the book and you can say, oh, this has been said, and people will religiously follow it. People believe what they want to believe, and they follow that, you know, put out.
Let's listen to more of that then.
I was the one who confronted my father, and I end up being the one being charged. Is it the anti-Christian element that you're referring to here? Right. And Christian, I think that there is a hostility that comes towards, especially women pastors, people who are doing something a little different than the norm. And it's a tragic blight, I think, on sections of the Australian media and on sections of the Australian population.
So, because he's claiming persecution, so I want to know where this persecution is coming from, and it seems to coincide.
It's not on him, and he's making it about him, and this is my problem because yes, there is a political systemic issue in Australia where people do not like Christianity, where it used to be a lot more Christian, but there is a move away from Christianity in Australia. And there's a move away from Christianity because people like Brian Houston keep abusing their power. And that's the reason why. It's not because he's being singled out. It's because he's actually gone and misused his power. He's misappropriated funds. And it's not even allegedly. It's been proven that he's done that, that the church has done that, that they've taken VIP, they've taken first flights of VIP tours to, Korea, North Korea, where, different places they've gone to.
Korea. That's what you remember. Korea.
I remember the very lavish North Korea film, really, which is the most recent one.
Okay. Sorry, my apologies.
North Korea, sorry, South Korea. I sound like a complete idiot now. It's just, it's too set.
I would agree that the Australian media has historically been suspicious of it. I mean, it's supposed to be stereotypically a cynical population, hardy, sun-weathered, so yeah, there was an article that even came up in court again from 2003 in the Sydney Morning Herald, very famous article called Praise the Lord and Pass the Checkbook by Greg Bearup. And this journalist spent a few days with Brian and Bobby, and they felt what's known as stitched up. They felt that he had been dishonest with them, and they never gave another interview to a journalist like that again. And so you can see he's kind of opening up. So the Australian media have, I guess, I don't want to go into too much history, but, there's a sort of a mainstream Protestant feel about the place with a sprinkle of Catholics around. So, nothing too outrageous. So they weren't particularly welcoming of this, what was viewed as, this American style of religion. Whereas other countries have had a very different absorption of this style of religion.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's right there, but I don't know that it's a conspiracy that, got them to rev up the DPP, but let's see what else.
Australian media and on sections of the Australian population. Yes, well, that's spooky stories about your evil church and the secrets of the church, documentaries like that. It was quite extraordinary. A lot of people will want to know, what did you do about your father when he admitted to you in 1999 that he had abused that boy? And was it like, the accusation was from the prosecutors who pray, oh, keep it quiet. Is that what you actually did? No, in fact, the exact opposite. One of the things that came out today in the judgment was that the judge believed, the magistrate believed that I, in fact, was in a way exactly the opposite to a cover up, which is what I've always believed because that's exactly what happened.
Which is what I've always believed because that's exactly what happened. I tend to just believe things because they're true they're true, therefore I believe them.
People immediately.
Oh, sorry. This
Right.
is fantastic. I won't be stopping as often, but this early stuff is just fabulous.
Because that's exactly what happened. I began to tell people immediately.
Mm.
You told the church you got your father out of the church. Is that correct? I suspended his credential after I confronted him. And then I went to the board members of both the church he pastored, Sydney Christian Life Centre, and the church that I pastored, which then was Hills Christian Life Centre, that Hillsong Church. And systematically from there, spoke to leaders, spoke to various groups in the church. As I said, I spoke to the National Executive of the Assemblies of God, who are the governing body. It's a movement of around 1,100 churches. And so I always felt like I got on the front foot and addressed the situation. It was, to be honest, a little bit shocking. Because even it ended up in a Royal Commission in 2014, which now...
Tanya? Now, I think that there's the issue that he's what he's done. He was essentially, and this is something they did in my situation as well, and other situations as well, is that as soon as they try to mediate these things within their church, that's already extremely toxic and pretty much scares people. It scares people off. I think what they really wanted to do, and this is what he wanted to silence him. Let's get it. It wasn't because he didn't believe his father was, this person or this evil monster, because I think he knew that. I think that he actively went to silence them because he's like, in my opinion, I'm just making assumptions here, right? He's probably like, this is not going to steal the rest of my life. This is my church. It's not going to steal my church's time. And I'm just going to silence. I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to start silence. I know it happened. He's a 38-year-old man. He's not going to go to the police because we've got all our henchmen that will psychologically, and they've got a great way of psychologically breaking people down as well. Yeah, I think it was just a whole psychological tactic to, stop him from stop Brett from talking, and this is all victim shaming. It's even from this reporter, it's complete victim shaming. There's
Now,
no no
it's so interesting. The use of the words because I was there and I lived in the local area at the time. No, I was not attending, but I was in 2001, what was I, 30 years old. I had a 3-year-old and I had friends in the area and I attended the very first speech that Brian gave about his father's serious moral failure. There was no indication of what that serious
I
moral
never even knew about it when I got there, to be honest with you, in 2011, 2012, around when I got there.
By that point, they'd well and I think another thing that's really worth mentioning is that technology has changed so much in the past
It has.
25 years that there's no way that they thought this was ever going to catch up with anybody.
No, I don't think they ever thought that they would have to deal with this stuff. But I think also because so many people started getting fed up and they started speaking out, the whole narrative come to get.
But it was just phone calls and files in the old days and letters in the mail. You could, you didn't know it was going to be, even if the difference between the Royal Commission and now. So when everybody gave evidence at the Royal Commission in 2014, they didn't quite get their heads around, I think, that it was going to be accessible on YouTube for anyone to watch at any time.
Yeah,
The way it is now, as you are free to Google.
I do want to touch base on something else as well.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that the church overall has been attacked by the Australian media. However, I feel like what he is portraying throughout his entire interview is that Hillsong is the church. Now, we have to be very clear that Hillsong does not represent the greater church of Australia. Hillsong represents a very small part, or there is a
Yeah.
part of Australia, but there is Anglicans in this. Anglican, by far, we've got more Anglicans, I believe, than charismatic or Pentecostal Christians in Australia. We've got a lot of Anglican churches. We have Presbyterian churches and very good-hearted people who actually, I've spoken to leaders from the Anglican Church who have said we completely condemn what Brian Houston has done. We condemn, even from the inside, people who are high up at the Anglican Church have told me that even from the inside, we have seen that there has been great corruption at Hillsong. So for them to paint this narrative that the Australian media is actively going out against the Christian church, which is Hillsong, no, it's going out overall, but Hillsong has actually been the problem that has caused this domino effect because most of the other churches are doing a really good job at looking after people.
I think
Catholic Church is a different story, but I mean, in terms of like Bible
Right.
believing Christians, Catholics believe a little different. They don't always even see themselves as Christians.
See, and it's that. Yeah, I do love you. It's that that entitlement to a version of the truth, which some of us find difficult to um, allow. So I think one of the main reasons that places like churches are grilled in the media at times, and that's again, a general kind of statement to make, is because of their power and, their influence and their, the tax breaks, all of the opportunities and privileges
But
that.
tax breaks can be good if you have the right kind of organization that is actively going out, feeding the hungry, looking after the community, and honestly, making sure that the elderly are looked after. All those good things, and those
Right.
things that I mean, I've been involved with places like Agnicare where I've seen the work that has been done and I've seen that the money actually goes where it says it's supposed to go. However, there are those that are abusing it. But should we then, brush all churches out of that thing? And that's the problem. We can't.
Just why the media has said, have asked questions and asked, I wouldn't even call them tough enough questions that get heard. But yeah, because, relative to the population, why are these people giving, such extended privileges without any kind of consequence as we're seeing? I mean, the whistleblower documents, we will continue, but the whistleblower documents showed that that Hillsong has evaded $80 million worth
I
of.
know. And where is that money and why is it not being investigated? I
you know,
just first book.
It's
Do we
devastating.
only have one good person in the entire parliament that is speaking out, and Andrew Wilkie, or are they all just
Not matter? Does it not? I mean, you think of people that are paying this incredible rent and small businesses trying to get through. Anyway, here we go. Let's listen to a bit more triping like.
sorry, we can just run on a tangent, but
Oh, so many 10.
As I think I said, I spoke to the National Executive of the Assembly.
Actually, you know what I'm going to do? So we're just going to listen to that one more time about how carefully he chose his response to, what did you do? Who did you tell? Very carefully chosen because he absolutely did not tell the church straight away what had happened.
The opposite, do a cover up, which is what I've always believed because that's exactly what happened. I began to tell people immediately. You told the church you got your father out of the church, is that correct?
This has been.
I suspended his credential after I confronted him. And then I went to the board members of both the church he pastored, Sydney Christian Life Centre, and the church that I pastored, which was Hills Christian Life Centre, and Hillsong Church. And systematically from there, spoke to leaders, to various groups in the church. As I think I said, I spoke to the National Executive of the Assemblies of God, who were the governing body. It's a movement of around 1,100 churches. And
That he
and for us,
spearheaded. We started spearheading.
understands what and address the situation.
But you didn't
That was,
tell
to
us
be honest, a little
in the
bit shocked
culture.
that conceiving it ended up in a Royal Commission in 2014, but now 9 years ago. So 25 years since this happened, over 50 years since his innocence, 9 years since the Royal Commission, and 2 years since I got charged. And then finally today in 2023, we got to this point.
Okay, let me say something that I just think is just like I can't believe that this keeps going on, and it's you know what, when I was reading a lot of the comments, especially pertaining to this interview, and a lot of people are just obviously rooting for him and so forth, but I just wonder how people would feel if if their loved one was the one that was sexually assaulted by
I'm,
this man.
I'm waiting for him to acknowledge that the Royal Commission was a wonderful thing, because when you are a transparent and an organization that strives for transparency,
Yeah.
to be healthy and to protect children and to have the highest form of safeguarding, the Royal Commission was just such an excellent mechanism to illuminate the issues, to that we studied the recommendations, we're trying to apply as many.
But the thing is, it's still this issue that he hasn't he hasn't gone to the police. Like as somebody that has lived in Australia for a long time, Australians always tell me, general Australians, that there's this duty of care. They're like, you have a duty of care to talk about this. You have a duty of care to in a workplace as well. In any corporate setting, we get taught you have a duty of care if there's bullying. There's a duty of care of this, but it's not a duty of care to tell the church and to tell the people. It's a duty of care to go to the police, because as soon as if I told any general Australian on the streets that, hey, was, I know somebody that was sexually assaulted, they would say it's your duty of care to go to the police. It would be wrong of you to keep that away.
Well, that lives next door.
Exactly. It would be a duty of care to go to the police immediately and to talk to them.
And that I'm so flabbergasted by some of this, because a lot of the the judge, I'm so disappointed, asked questions about, well, so what, you took his credentials away? So what? That was for what? 1 or 2 or 3 hours a week? What about the rest of the time and the rest of the
But the
community?
thing is, he's still in the community. So if he was an active pedophile and it's not even alleged anymore, he is an active community member. He is actively staying next door to you. Your children can be exposed to him. I mean, I see the comments. I hear the people constantly say, "Oh, it's a pedophile. I don't want to live next to a pedophile." But you're saying Brian Houston is okay to protect his pedophile father, who was put back into society without any rehabilitation, because the church is not just going to rehabilitate him. He can lie, and a lot of people have done this, and then he goes out and abuses 5, 6, 7, 8 more children.
Excuse me, they deemed him, these men in power deemed him to be too up
Redeemed.
to reoffend.
But it's if you look in America, some of the most horrific pedophilic abuse cases come from 80 to even 85-year-old, 70 to 80-year-old men.
They offend in wheelchairs.
This is just crazy to me.
They made these decisions regardless of keeping in mind they had a manual that they had ratified policy in May of 1999 about what to do when a complainant came forward. And there were several steps. I think there were 4 from memory. And, one was to offer counseling, one was to offer to go to the police. And that's been circumvented and dodged and weaved along the way as well.
No, did Brett ever feel that was he told that he could go to the police?
Well, it comes up in this interview, which was quite interesting. I'll leave that for now. There was certainly, because I think it's about to happen, there was certainly policy in place, and there was also the Children and Young People's Care and Protection Act, which had come through in 1998. And George Agajanian, the business manager, was responsible for implementing that. Now, what
It's
is
a great piece of work.
George is a very powerful man within the organization with a long history of loyalty and has been the business manager for a long time. I don't think he's that anymore. I think we've got Crouchy on the job there now, Dr. Stockter. It was George's responsibility under that act to report any minister who had been disciplined within the previous 5 years, and they failed to do so. And when asked at the trial why he failed to do so, he said he was still getting acquainted. He's still getting familiar with the legislation. That was 18 months old and his responsibility. So there were several kind of breakdowns, in the policy and procedure side of things that was brought up in the Royal Commission. So I'm just, so fascinated by the words that have seemed to have been so very carefully chosen. And I, don't tell me him and Bolt haven't rehearsed this, because Bolt says, you told the church. Houston doesn't say, I told the church. Bolt says, you told the church.
If it was rehearsed, Tanya, then they must have known before that he was going to get a not guilty verdict, which just makes me go, who is this judge? But anyway.
Well, I sat in that trial and I saw that judge, and he asked questions. He seemed to seek clarification, understanding, and there were just so many kind of sweeping assumptions in the judgment
There might
itself.
not have been enough evidence.
But yeah, I mean, reasonable doubt. If the glove doesn't fit, you got to acquit.
Yeah.
Listen, and since I got charged,
Me.
only today in 2023,
Me.
we got to this point.
Me.
Always me. Yeah.
But it's an incredible saga.
Isn't it?
Now, your argument was, the victim tells you, I don't want you to go to the police. By the time you know it, he's in his late 30s. He could himself go to the police. And apparently hadn't done so and hadn't turned his mind to doing that. Do you think you were justified in not going to the police yourself? Well, it's the exact words to me were, I don't want you to tell the police. He said, if anyone is going to go to the police, it will be me. But that was also substantiated by his mother, who had told me didn't want to go to the police, and other people who were privy to the information of this, that my dad had allegedly abused President Doc. And so...
Allegedly? So how... it's not alleged.
We're not first.
Yeah. The use of the word allegedly is certainly interesting. Okay.
Because he feels like he doesn't believe that he was raped by his father. It has been proven that he has. And that to me is like, just admit it. Just go about, my dad is a pedophile. He was bad. He was a terrible person. I'm not that person. I want to change my life. I want to change the way people see me. And that would be so authentic on a...
He's a nasty, nasty man. And he's going to get in every strike. Everybody who has wronged him had better get their affairs in order, because, he's California dreaming.
No, but listen, there's a God up there who will have justice on this. And I don't always think these people realize it.
To that guy, you think he's even chatted to that? Do you know what I mean? Like if
he doesn't repent, it's a straight to hell, in my opinion. But that's
if he had any concept of that set of beliefs, would he behave in?
But then he's not a real Christian. So Christians that are listening to this need to understand that if you're acting like this, you're not a Christian. This is not a way that Christians act. Christians do not circumnavigate. Christians do the right thing. They don't lie. They don't try and make themselves look better. They speak the truth, no matter what.
I'll give you a quick example. When I started researching the book, I thought, it was Easter of 2005, and I thought, okay, I'll spend some time over the weekend looking at the Bible and seeing, if these guys, because I haven't really studied it, must be me. I haven't studied it close enough. I better have a look. I'll start with Matthew and see which parts of them match up. You get to chapter 15, I was like, how am I going to write 10 books?
There's some scripture that I could even read about this.
We could, but...
Just a quick one. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are raving wolves.
that's allegedly abused Christian dog.
Slap in the
And
face,
so
man.
there was a clear narrative. He didn't want the police, and he was 37. Well,
Clear narrative.
So he was 37, and that's now an issue for if somebody's been abused. I don't care if they're 50, if they're 60, or if they're 12. They have been abused. It's been proven that he's been abused, and you are calling him a 37-year-old man and mocking him for it's. This is pure gaslighting. Even from me as a right-wing person, I think this is
Now,
pure.
well, regardless of wings, there's a situation called blind reporting where you can go to the police and say, there's a pedophile next door. How do you know? Well, I know because the victim told me themselves, but I am not going to tell you who
But if
that.
he did that, then he would be the one that lost the empire because his dad would have a lot of money as well, probably at 6.
But it was an option. So it's not just about, uh, involving the victim. You could, and there are problems with blind reporting, as it's known, but, the safety of the rest of the community, it's just, to some of us, mind-boggling.
Sick. It's pretty sick, to be
He
honest.
wants to. He's just some regular guy, and he doesn't understand. Why is everyone picking on me?
Yeah, I think we need to get to the point of why everybody's picking on him. People are picking on him because he's just not taking responsibility for what's happened. He just needs to be honest, and he's actually digging himself a much deeper hole. And it's because he's in these denial, holes of trying to self protect, where he's lying so much that he needs to self protect that it becomes, it's crazy. Actually, I just think they're so used to lying and believing themselves. They're
Well,
narcissists.
it's going to be so interesting because, not guilty. So he can now tell whatever version of it he wants, I guess, within some.
And the
bound-
story is going to come up because he says he's going to write a book about it. So let's get to that part.
Yeah, he's going to write his auto-biography, he said.
Oh gosh, please
Stuff.
spare the world.
And I'm of the understanding that it's. Did I tell you who's going to write it? Ghost Rock, because obviously he doesn't write his own books. I mean,
Oh,
that's
the fraud. Is it the person that wrote Spain?
in your wildest dreams, it would be a Pulitzer Prize-winning ghostwriter. Think of the direct opposite, and that's his scribe. Yeah.
Who's the scribe?
Come on. Yep.
Oh, Bobby.
Yes. Got it in one.
Oh my gosh. So she's an aspiring author.
And it's going to be raw, vulnerable, and honest, which between the two of them, I want to.
I don't know how that's going to come out. I mean, I wonder if there's going to be nail salons and pink nails. But as far as
It's going to be a tally of wrongs by Joe
I
himself.
really hope that the women don't need to do the flex with their husband so that they can get more sex.
And that's this is the upshot of the horrifying avalanche ahead. I just see, righteous tour. We were attacked by the devil. We never lost faith, never lost sight. We never did anything wrong. And the courts have shown that, even though we didn't participate with them and didn't report to the police, we now will, do you know what I mean? We'll take what we can. And Bobby, like, do you know what I mean? I've got post-traumatic stress of what's about to happen.
Well, I think,
She was this faithful wife and, and was so
we're going to be talking, but he did mention that I think he is probably a little bit clear on the fact that Australians were done with him.
Yeah. So
I think Australians are done with him. Maybe not in Balcombe Hills, but over the rest of Australia, I think the majority of Australians, I don't think he's welcome. I don't think he's welcome at the local coffee shop, maybe in Beecroft or, maybe Cherrybrook. But I think even there, people are
like any foreign artist, he's just come and mined the hell out of this countryside, and then off he goes to retire, go back to Nobu. I'm sure Robert De Niro must be missing him. They shipped a dog. There's a dog called Lido, named after his housing where he lives.
Is he friends with Robert De Niro?
Well, that's where he goes to dinner at Nobu there. So it came up on the account. De Niro's
Yeah, but no, I mean, Nobu is pretty much a prominent place even here even in Melbourne. So yeah,
don't be seen in Melbourne. Don't be.
if it can't be seen in
Ew.
Melbourne,
Ew. This is Orange County or whatever, Newport Beach. Yeah.
is Melbourne too grubby for this man?
And so there was a clear narrative. He didn't want the police, and then he was 37 when he first found out.
Well,
Again, section of the media loved and they made it look like, I found this out when it was a 7-year-old boy.
no
And
one's
that was the
ever-
instant obvious thing
no
that would
one's
have
ever
gone to
said
the
that.
police. But no, it was a 37-year-old
no
man.
one's ever said that.
And all the way up till when my father died, 5 years later, still, the victim, who I didn't feel very sad for.
Oh,
But he hadn't still gone to the police.
no.
at
Wonder
that
why.
point. And nor had anyone,
Victims.
obviously, we would have gone to the police. But no, it was a 37-year-old man. And all the way up till when my father died, 5 years later, still, the victim, who I didn't feel very sad for. But he hadn't still gone to the police at that point, and nor had anyone else.
So how did you end up getting charged? It's just an absolute mystery to me, given these fairly, uncontroversial facts.
Well, yes, I heard, again, sections of the media.
Media. The media. The media.
Because they built a
Complicit.
narrative on a premise.
Let's just stop there for 1 second. It's not the media. It's the people that have spoken out to the media. Then the media have gone, what's happening there?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Yeah.
the media only reacts on the responses around them. They don't necessarily go out and search. There are elements of the media that go and search, but they only go search. If you're a journalist, you only go where there's the smoke. If there's smoke, there's fire. And I remember one of the journalists from ABC saying this to me. Keep hearing these rumors from people that things are happening there that are not good. And it's not the media that go out there and that we
Yeah.
have the data. There's 100 different media houses, different people that work on different lines. It's not this big conspiracy. It's like there's somebody that goes to one journalist and says, this has happened to me. And then they go, oh, maybe we can talk to more people. And then more people collectively come together. And because there's an issue, there's a systemic issue.
But I think we need to keep in mind while we listen to this that he's not talking to you or I. And you know what? I need to say this. He continues to say it's been a bad time for Bobby and I, and it's driving me up the wall because Bobby and I went to the shops, right? This is how it works grammatically. I've got to get through this. But he continues to say, it's been a great day for Bobby and I. Now it's not, it's Bobby and me. And anyway, this whole thing is so rehearsed. He's had these scripted lines. You can hear it right the way through. These two have scripted this together. So I just don't see it any other way. Now,
It's very, very rehearsed. It's a complete PR driven.
it's a mystery to me, says Vulture. Well, why don't you ask someone then? Sure, you've got a lawyer there at the station. You could say, hey, this is a mystery to me. Why did this happen? I've got a guest on later.
The whole thing is just basically him, it's always as if he is like a mouthpiece for, I never thought that journalism would be where if you're a journalist, you're supposed to still be, there should be still some sort of shadow of the doubt because you could get somebody on like that woman from who had that medical device. I forgot what her name was. And she sold everybody the live medical device. Now, if you come back on after you've had all of these things, let's say she was found not guilty, you would still have a shot. You would still go, was it completely true? There must be some truth in the errors that have been made. This is just all PR. Like this is all just like whitewashing him and saying he is perfect. He has done no wrong.
It's a mystery to me. I'm Andrew Bolt.
Yeah.
Terrible.
No. complicit because they built a narrative on a premise that was completely false. And
Completely
that
false.
narrative by omission, I think omission is one of the biggest tools of pictures that are painted.
Oh, I love it. Omission is one of the biggest tools of the pictures that are painted.
I wonder if ChatGPT wrote that for him.
No, but its irony can be pretty ironic sometimes, as they said in Plaid. Okay.
Not mentioning that this wasn't a boy that I found out was being abused.
No one's ever said that.
37-year-old
Seriously.
man who had been abused
Never
in
read that.
1970 when I was a teenager, by the
For
way.
you.
And I was kind of unaware of it.
Obviously.
And so I think that that even came to the point where the DPP charged me with picture from the media.
So it's about the media. Now,
It's always someone else that a narcissist has to blame if something goes wrong in their life. Like, it's the media. It's the media. It's not my fault. I had nothing to do with anything. My actions were all pure and wonderful and righteous, and I've just been persecuted by everybody else, and I can't do anything wrong.
and the only thing that I can think is that, he's not talking to us. He's talking to his future, the people that are going to say, well, hang on, what happened with his case? Oh, I'll go look that up. Or if they even hear about it at all, and he goes media, and they go, oh, well, not guilty. He must have been all right. On we go. He's not talking to you and me, Bobby and I. He's not talking to you and me.
No, he's talking to his fundraising.
Yeah, just an exercise for future audiences.
Look, I will tell you something. These people operate on a different lens. They operate on coming from marketing PR background, understanding how they operate. They operate, and there's no such thing as bad publicity. Everything is good publicity for them. And a bad situation, to weave and redeem, people love, especially in the States, they love a redemption story. But to be honest with you, they've tried that with Cole. It hasn't gone down as it.
Well, those terrible documentaries about secrets of your angel.
But I mean, this is my beef with this guy as well, is with Andrew Bolt. It's probably some of the worst journalism that I've seen. And I grew up with a grandfather that was a journalist, and my mother was a journalist. And I've honestly never seen anybody go, is there any truth to those documentaries? Because if you were a good journalist, you would, even in that meeting, go, and I've seen 60 Minutes do this, for instance, with Tom Cruise and other celebrities, but you would go, but is there any truth in those 60? Because there has to be some sort of something there that you could say that you were sorry about, that you feel remorse about, that might have happened. But it's basically just saying, those are rubbish. They don't mean anything. Let's move on. You're amazing. That's pretty much the message.
It's disappointing to see that. Yeah. I mean, as someone who identifies, as you said, as not a lefty, you can see why the lefties would complain about journalism.
But he's actually really acting like a lefty, because a lot of times in the far left, they would be like, this is it. This is all we believe. There's no such thing as, so it's odd. I always say that it's all a game, this thing.
Yeah.
But this is all about Brian Houston, and it's basically an advertisement for Brian. That's what it is.
It's certainly a springboard, isn't it, into the future?
Sorry, and you got me fired up there, because I actually
love it
for a little bit. With his all act, and he looks like an older guy now. Looks like he needs to go by the spa and get some rest. And I'm sure, any court case takes a toll on people, but some of the lies and the accusations, just stop being like this,
I think it's mentioned that I believe they've set a date where Brian is going for court costs.
Yeah, of course. I knew that was coming. I just said that to myself yesterday. I was there. But my thing is this. I honestly think that I think that this isn't the biggest issue. The issue is him misappropriating funds. Why were they using
I
it?
know. All right. Come on. One felony at a time, if you don't.
The fact that that's even came to the point where the DPP charged me with picture from the media.
But how is the pressure from the media? I have never heard of law enforcement being pressured to charge somebody. I have never in my life seen that happen.
I mean, if anything, for anybody who watched, the show on the Luna Park Fire that was on the ABC, so meticulously put together by the journalists there, or the case of Kelly Lane that's on Netflix. The media go to extensive trouble and research with cases, and nothing comes about.
And I mean, we had, for instance, a prominent person who is a media journalist, one of the first ones, and he went to Hillsong and he's like, "Oh, yeah, they're not that bad in this." He was trying to really be like, he was really trying to just kind of have a balance of like, this is good, this is bad, and he was not. I don't remember him once being, "Oh, that's bad," in Hillsong first. He first went, "Wait, what is it like, really?" And then trying to, just assess and give a balanced view. But I've never seen media aggressively push for any kind of
Yes, I think it was
compromise.
that simple.
No.
Do you draw any parallels with the George Pell case?
Oh, now very quickly, in case anybody doesn't recall, George Pell, who died, I think, about a year ago, was the third most powerful Catholic in the world. He was the cardinal in Australia, particularly in Melbourne. He had been accused for a long time of concealing pedophiles within the Catholic Church. He was eventually charged with the sexual assault of two young boys, historically, I think 30 odd years ago, and he had been found guilty. I don't have the dates in front of me. It's a few years ago. He had been found guilty. He spent 9 months in jail. It was overturned by a higher court unanimously. I don't want to get it wrong. So it's Supreme Court. I don't know. It'll come up, and that's George Pell, another person who had been accused of concealing pedophiles, who was eventually exonerated.
It's just, to me, that it's probably not a great PR move to mention that, especially if you're trying to reel people in, because I think that there's still a lot of people out there that
Hang on, wait.
I always felt very sad for George Pell because of my own experiences. And I
Shockingly, just
I was very really honest with the High Court, Supreme Court. Finally, unanimously found him.
See?
Just opinion it took that long. And other church figures as well. Especially, as I said, there's a little bit of prominence to those church figures. Even the attention at the Royal Commission that say Cardinal Pell got and then I got, maybe one or two others who were other situations that may even have been worse. They didn't get any attention at all.
It just
Brian Houston, I don't know whether there's a connection here or
the fiction just invisible.
else. But from the outside, it seems that your life went a bit haywire after you were charged, or about the time you were charged.
2 years ago.
You were charged with drunk driving in the US 2 years ago. You're investigated by the church for allegedly being inappropriate with two female staffers around the same time. You resigned as the church's pastor. You went to the US. What on earth happened there? What is this connected? Are they just different sort of unfortunate events? What happened?
There's a big questions.
Yeah, they sure are.
From the time in 1999 when I found out about my father, that's basically framed so much of my life from that point till now. Completely changed.
Yeah.
The day-to-day things I was addressing in life, and yes, sadly, over those years, particularly in more recent years, I didn't handle all those things well. I know a lot of the narratives out there are false, not right.
Yes.
I never had a sexual issue. I had a substance issue. And one of those was thinking tablets, which I overcame in 2012, but never in a single sleeping tablet till 2012.
It'd be interesting to get the medical record there and what constitutes a sleeping tablet, Shane Warne. Did your mum give it to you?
Yeah, it's I just
Oh, he said that he was stepping down from Hillsong to focus on the case ahead, and
I thought he was fired.
it actually eventuated that it was due to breaching the code of conduct for inappropriate communications or whatever with two separate women. So he's got a bit to say about that. But, I had a substance issue, but I've never taken a pill again. Hang on. Let's just, here we go.
The 12. And then the same day at Hillsong Conference, which is just a night of shame I'm very embarrassed about. But again, it's not what people think it is. I'll leave that for another time to talk about. But, and then the deal.
Is this where you've seen another woman in the woman's room? Is that the incident you mean?
Well, yes. And I knocked on the wrong door. In fact, I knocked on the door next to our door. And I thought that person was an hour in the state of confusion that I was in. But that's a story for another day.
Why? Why is that a story for another day? Why does he get to not answer?
And how is that okay from the journalist, and why is that getting a nod?
Well,
The fact, isn't that a little red flag?
Can you not just see the producers like waving their hands and nodding and kind of, holding up that teleprompter kind of?
But it's the same producers that have said that, oh, there's reports are damning, and I watched Sky News, and I mean, who are these people?
I don't see why he gets to get away with that. So, and having a substance issue first of all, as a CEO, and second of all, as a senior global pastor of a whatever that thing is. No, look, it's not just, I had a substance, as a leader, as a role model, as a what? Like what? You get to just leave it.
But let's just see the trend that usually goes on with substance abuse. There's a trend there's a trend that seems to be happening with him. I'm not a psychologist, but he's got three incidents with three different women. He's got a drinking problem, or not a drinking. He does have a drinking problem because he's been
Not
obviously
his friend, he said. Alcohol. Not his
and
friend.
then usually, I had an ex-boyfriend, one of my first boyfriends, and just to give you some context, his mum went into a lot of depression when we were about 17 or 18, and this was before I got married. And she would mix the pills with alcohol, and that became a really dangerous addiction, and that became something that would spiral into other things too. They came from a really rich family as well, but there was a problem for her because she couldn't deal with certain things. But addiction is not just stopped because you've decided you're not taking one more pill. Addiction, follow a trend.
Did she lead large stadiums of people and tell them how to live their lives and who to give their money to?
No, but even if she didn't, she had a child, so there's also that responsibility. But my point
is important, but
my point is that addiction doesn't just stop because you make it stop. Addiction is a long process.
Yes, yeah.
And if there is an issue that is so deeply rooted, it will continue to go on. So he's obviously he's making it so easy. Oh, I just stopped taking one pill. Like I haven't taken any other pills. No, that's not how addiction works. Addiction is a very long-winded process.
So intoxicated when he gave his "I am not an alcoholic" speech.
Can you see the documents of the court case coming up? Was there any pills in his system? Do they test for that as well?
For what? For during the trial?
Yeah, I mean, in the drink driving case, did he have any pills?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if
They
toxicology.
should have that. Toxicology should show everything.
Because his blood alcohol level was 0.23.
Yeah, but it's 2.23, but it should have other stuff because they usually test for drugs too. So if they test for that, they'll test for drugs, and then there should be any pills that come up.
I begged TMZ for the body cam footage. I never heard anything back.
Great.
I never heard anything back.
You don't need TMZ for it. Body cam footage is usually released after during a trial, but it should be released by now.
Oh, man. Show me.
Okay, I'll try and look for it.
Uh,
Okay. Well, where are you now in your life? I'm strong.
So something else I just wanted to add was he does refer to our room. Now, on the night in question, our former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and his wife, Jenny, had arrived on stage at Hillsong Conference. Brian had greeted her, had a big love fest. It was prayed, and they said all kinds of things that the Prime Minister shouldn't be mixing church and state with, but Mrs. Roberta Lee Houston wasn't there. And I just want to know why. Why would she miss out on an event like that? Very strange. Not support her husband on a night like this. Anyway, so he's quite clear that it's our room. Sorry. Let me just
I knocked on the door next to our door. And I thought that person was in our room in the state of confusion that I was in. But that's a story for another day.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, where are you now in your life? I'm strong. My wife and I are doing well. Today is a huge burden off our shoulders. And I'm only 69. I'm a young man, so I feel upbeat about the next decade. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, but I do know I'm too young to retire. And so I hope to make a
Workaholic.
solid contribution. I love the Lord Jesus Christ. I love serving Him. I love people. I love the congregation at Hillsong. We still miss them desperately. And
Take
I'm
us back. Take us
full
back.
of expectation that we'll forge out something for the future.
Or is that a takeover threat?
When you're making your home now, then it feels
See ya.
enough to be back in Australia. You know what? I love Australia. Bobby and I, we both love Australia, but Australia, in many ways, hasn't loved us.
No. True.
And that makes me very sad,
Wonder why.
but it's a truth.
Yeah.
And so we're in a state of flux. I think we've all
Give us
spending
our
more
80
time
million.
overseas where potentially there's a lot more opportunity for us. This is our place. I wasn't born in Australia, but I've been a citizen for over 40 years, and so it's in our blood. And I going for the Matildas last night. Yes.
We're Matildas. They don't want their support.
No, well, I mean, he's still a regular guy. He's just
Oh, super normal. I've never met anybody so normal in my entire life.
that's one of you,
Yeah,
Just
he's so normal. I mean, he's so normal that, you just feel the authenticity tap off of his back.
He doesn't love people. I can't.
People, if you don't love yourself, Tanya. He doesn't love himself.
Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course, to the narcissist definition, it's a very fragile ego, and
But we have to talk about how narcissists are born on another podcast. But narcissists are born out of trauma and all sorts of things.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's a victim again because he's not.
What do we do with that? Do we demonize people who have just had a psychological response to trauma and abandonment?
I can't make an excuse.
Questions, big question. Hold them. Hey, we still got a few. So, yeah, I had previously believed that he had renounced his Australian citizenship for US. So I don't know if that's necessarily true, but we'll follow that up. We'll find out, I suppose. He's a little bit footloose and fancy free, the old Brian. He's just pretty pleased. So, all right.
You didn't want to talk about the two cases where the church investigated harassment alleged of two women. One of them quit the church. I played earlier a clip.
Don't you love that? Like he's struggling for words, like he hasn't rehearsed every part of this. Like, I'm going to go.
I mean, when did they do this interview? Did they do this off a day after or on the day?
This was yesterday. This was the eve.
But I don't get how he's rehearsed it so well because it's on the day. So anyway, my alarm bells are going off.
What? I mean, you think it's not rehearsed?
No, I'm thinking it's rehearsed, but I'm thinking how would he have known
Oh,
to
yeah.
rehearse? Because you
Oh, I
need to
see. It's
rehearse the start.
yeah.
Unless he rehearsed two sides of it where but he must have known he was going to get off.
Well, towards the end of the trial, the defense really had hacked away at the legislation, and I would have thought that because it came down to this reasonable excuse, which was based on what did Brett want, what did Brian believe that Brett wanted, and those two things were, increasingly hard to prove what was going on beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's why we got the outcome that we did.
That clip of you preaching that you felt the Lord's forgiveness in the room. Do you forgive it now? Do you feel it now?
I've always known that God's a God of grace, and I took these things to God at the time. I mean, with the one issue was in 2012, I was in a single text. It was reported as some text, but it was a single text, and it said simply, under the influence of drinking tablets, and said it's simply quite a senior. I may have wanted to hug and kiss you. It was a stupid. I was not conscious. I was, in a state of self-consciousness. And when I woke up in the morning, realized what I'd done. It wasn't something that was done premeditated or anything like that. And I apologized immediately. So that happened.
So
And then
let's do-
2019.
Over to you.
So this is something that really got me because I was like, you said you weren't there, but you sent a text to somebody the night before. This is a man lying in his bed thinking about a girl that he likes or a woman in the office that he's had a thing for, and he's walked around with these feelings. It's not just, oh, I just felt like telling you I want to hug and a kiss tonight, and I'm going to send you a text, and tomorrow I'm going to regret it. This is somebody who has orchestrated these ideas and these thoughts in their head. It doesn't just happen with, oh, I've just seen him in the office, and unless he's a serial cheater and he's doing this on a permanent basis and going around live texting women thinking about it.
Only happened once. He sent one text once 11 years ago. And you're absolute. It's the planning, it's the lying, it's the deception that goes into this kind of stuff that, I don't know how people get over. It's like with the Pat Mercedes stuff. You go, oh, I just went to the one brothel the one time. I heard from somebody who asked him. And the sex worker recognized me because I'm so famous. And, and you go, no, it wasn't like a 5-minute decision. You've got a PA and you've got meetings and you've got things you've got to rearrange.
Yeah, no, there's definitely not. If you've been there once, you've been there twice, you've been there 3 times. There's no such thing as you're still on top.
Tell me from this Christian point of view, if you have a bad thought about a woman, did Jesus not say that's adultery?
No, it's completely wrong. I mean, I live with me and my husband.
What if you're drunk and you're just stupid?
No, I mean, you don't get drunk as a Christian because the Bible says very clearly, there's a lot of proverbs about getting drunk and why it's wrong to get drunk. And it's just not appropriate behavior.
Oh.
Say again?
What about if you're a pastor and
you have to stand up and you're not supposed to be taking sleeping pills I mean, in terms of like abusively, but you should be living an ethical life that represents what you are representing on stage. You should be representing in your private life as well. And if you are not doing that and you've had a moral failure, you need to go to the elders of the church, tell them you've had a moral failure, step down from the church, and then the congregation will go out on stage and tell them, I have had a moral failure. It's been a very bad time for us. It's going to affect the church badly, but I've put someone else in place and I'm going to get some help. He has never done that. That's the right way to do. Or give up your church.
Back room. He's never.
I mean, and he scolded Mark Driscoll in an interview because Mark Driscoll stepped down and he had to interview him for that because he was supposed to be at Hillsong Conference. And Mark Driscoll stood up at his church and he said, I can't do this. I've done this wrong. I used somebody that's a ghostwriter for my books, and he didn't even have he didn't have an affair or anything like that. He was like, I wrongly acted this way. I had anger towards people, and I'm going to step down, and I'm no longer going to be the pastor of the church. And he stopped um, for a long time, and he then started a I mean, that's the right way to do it. There's a lot you can fault Mark Driscoll on and certain things, but I'm just saying it's an example of how it should have happened. But Brian has always just gone, oh, well, it's just been like bad circumstances. There's never really any kind of like,
I mean, there's somebody has still not sat down with him and, or maybe it doesn't matter to the new market and explained what an apology is and how you take responsibility for having done something wrong.
it always comes out in the media because somebody then uncovers the little, because he digs these little holes to put put the truth away, because his dad used to cover things up. So you're only as good as you learn from your parents, I always say.
Wow.
And not everyone. But I mean, think about it, right? This guy's father was covering up abuses for a long time. He's learned to basically take on the same kind of style within the church, and they've constantly just keep covering things up. But what they don't get and they don't learn from is like every time you cover something up, it keeps coming up again because somebody's going to talk and somebody's going to be out there, and then they have to just PR manage it again.
And wouldn't it be fascinating and wonderful if the recipient of the text and or texts such as those received was able to communicate with people as to what really went on, because it's kind of important and we
I think
understand.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we understand people don't want to necessarily go public, but gee, there's some AI ways of disguising people. If only they could come forward and perhaps tell their side of the story, because I'm convinced that he didn't wake up and feel bad the next day. That's not what people do. They want to know how the text went.
The truth is that those people need to come out, and the truth needs to come out. I have heard from someone inside of the tired community, as I call them, the tired of Hillsong community, that there's more stuff that's coming out. Now I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yet to come out.
There is more stuff, and this is from people that haven't actually spoken out, that are quite, quite connected to, more connected than you would have thought.
Vanity Fair, just as a side issue, Vanity Fair chose to tell the story very specifically about Brian's inappropriate relationships. And, I'm sure they told the story deliberately to target the people who know who the two men are. The story goes, two men are playing golf. One says, Brian, there was an incident with Brian and my mother in a hotel. And the other one says, well, that's interesting because there was an incident with the same sort of thing with Brian and my wife in a hotel. So it's a process of elimination, basically who the golf players are and who the mothers and wives are. But, so it's going to, it'll get around.
I'm sure it's all happening there by the Maroubra golf course, or what's it called, Little Bay golf course.
Little Bay?
Where
I'm thinking more to Castle Hill Golf Club. Nice.
No, there's a big golf course. He's more in the Bondi scene though, so he would be.
I don't know who these two golf players were.
Would be interesting to know. I think that those people need to speak out. I don't know if they've signed an NDA and then signed. Maybe they've taken some money or something as well, or they just don't want to be in the limelight. I don't know, but for the sake of
wouldn't be the first time that it's been offered.
Oh, I do see there's a new article out that just came out. Former Hillsong leaders Brian daughter opens up about heavy heart after.
Well, let's get through this one. Let's just get through this one, and we'll add that as a bonus. Let's go.
It was a stupid text. I was not conscious. I was, in a state of subconsciousness. And when I woke up in the morning, realized what I'd done. It wasn't something that was done premeditated or anything like that. And I apologized immediately. So that happened. And then in 2019 is a situation where, again, I took a double dose of anti-anxiety tablets. That only ever happened once. I never had a problem with those tablets. It happened once. I mixed with alcohol. Again, I was in a state of confusion and ended up knocking on the door next to our room rather than our door.
Houston, do you think one of the reasons you felt targeted in this whole process Was that you were connected, for instance, with Scott Morrison, or he with your church, he being Pentecostal himself? Did that make you more of a political target?
Oh, there's no doubt. And, it was a big up in many ways. I mean, it's been reported thousands of times that Morrison said that I was his mentor in his maiden speech in Parliament. If anyone goes and reads the Hansard report, I never said that. He never said that. He never ever said that. He mentioned three pastors who had had an influence on his life, and I was one of them. So the whole thing has been one of those stories that, and growing legs, it wasn't even real. And
That is actually true, according to Hansett. The word mentor wasn't used.
growing legs, it wasn't even real. And Scott Morrison, I understood just how little we had talked. And over the years that he was probably still in politics, lead out to when he was Prime Minister, they would realise that the whole story's, again, like many things, a veto and fulfill a political agenda.
But yet he was close enough to you to reportedly try to get you to come along into the White House with him in one of his visits as Prime Minister.
Yeah. I was completely oblivious to that. I got a call from the Wall Street Journal asking if, I'd been rejected from the White House. It's like, I said no. So there's not true.
Funny game.
Apparently I had been invited along with a lot of other people. And
One of the
there's a
crowd.
lot of story around that too. I've got friends in America who have worked in the White House who think that the fact that was generated here in Australia.
Yes.
In other words, it wasn't the Americans who
It's the media.
failed that possibility, but in fact, here in Australia, I guess we'll never know.
We
What I
won't.
do know is I was at the White House and in the Oval Office, just not so long after that. So,
You got in there, didn't you? Yeah, made it in.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah, you.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I didn't Google the royal family.
really?
I just met him at a pub one night.
Of course, yeah, he just wants to meet. He doesn't care about the royal family. He wants to meet Trump. That's
Look
just
at
what.
Man, I made it in. Don't. All right, so
Don't push me.
30 seconds.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Houston, you're looking a little thinner and I must say a little more drawn than
Maybe he's on his
you
own.
were some years ago. Maybe you're dressing a bit down. You worry me a bit. Is it just the day that, no?
well, I didn't, it's been a big day, so I should be clean up.
Very big day.
Because it's been a day that's been coming for a long time. I'm not down here dry. I guess I'm a little bit in a bubble, just trying to get my thoughts together around everything that's happened. But I do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
But thank you so very much for coming on to the show.
And that was that. Bolt goes on later to say that he feels sorry for Brian Houston. If we want to talk narratives, I think that's been a beautiful one. I'm about to press stop recording to take another break before we do the Laura thing. Anything else you want to chuck in?
I think he does. I'll have some parting thoughts. I do think he does look like he's been through the ringer. He doesn't look like he's been through a good time. I do have, as a Christian, I can understand that, people do.
He looks all right close up. Trust me. He's not so.
No, he does. But what
Like,
I'm just
it's
trying
like-
to say is that we have to think of the human being that's on the other side as well. There is still a human being there. You know what? If he just had fessed up, just been himself and said, this is all the stuff, this is all the dirt, it would have been such a more beautiful narrative for people to understand. But what these people don't understand at Hillsong is that they feel like their whole lives needs to be a cover up. They're running constantly from themselves. How difficult is life to constantly have to run from yourself? And we live in a day and age where you don't need to do that anymore. You can be who you are. Why
But
do
you
you have to
do that anymore is kind of the lesson of this either way.
No, what I mean is you can't be this, this kind of psyched up PR way of talking of, I understand certain things need to be PR'd, which I do understand, but not with this. What I mean with this is we're in a society that would understand why his father was a pedophile, that actually feel sad for him because he tells his story. He didn't have to cover it up. Why
Yeah,
isn't he just real? That's what I'm just trying to say. He's not real.
yeah.
He doesn't come through as authentic. He doesn't come through as real. And that's sad because there's a person there that could have been an amazing person that has chosen the other side and to manipulate, to gaslight, and to become a narcissist. And that to me is very sad because he actually had the power and the clout and the charisma to actually make a change in the world, but he's chosen the opposite of trying to make a change. He's actually really gone against making a change. He thinks he's making a change somehow, but he's not making a change because he's not being real. And that's a sad part. There's a tragic part to this.
There's not a drop of compassion there for anybody else apart from himself.
Always the media. It's always himself. It's always the media. It's never himself. It's always something else except the Eustace, and they'll live like that until they die. So unless there's a miracle from God that goes and they repent, but that's probably going to be very far off.
Is that how your God works? I mean, well,
No, I believe that there are people in this world, that have, I personally used to be a very bad person in my own youth, and God changed me, and He changed the way that
But did you use private jets as Ubers?
No, but I did other things in life that I think was wrong, and I hurt other people as well. But the thing is, when God changed me, and when you really come to know God as a savior, or Jesus as a savior, and you look at how Jesus lived, you start realizing that you have to be honest with people about who you are, and you've got to love people as well authentically, even though it might hurt your reputation. But you've always got to do the right thing. But that comes with a conviction when you're a Christian, and I think your dad was very much like that too.
Look,
Yeah.
you're too kind, and it reminds me of your relationship with me. It was very sweet. Now, hold these thoughts, but we've got a bonus article coming up, do we not?
We do. I need to
Right.
find it now. Yep, let's get it.
Oh, just hold on. Lawsy has spoken.
Yes.
So there you have it. Thank you for joining us for that interesting conversation. Yolandi's a marketing professional and holds so many of the same views as I do, trained in social work. So I don't know, boys. I don't know what went wrong, or it's just because you got an outcome doesn't mean it hasn't all gone wrong. That interview is, of course, very difficult for a lot of people to listen to, so I hope that made it a little bit easier. Thank you, as always, for your support, your input, your feedback, your communication. All the contributions just mean so much. Let's keep getting the message out there that you can keep leaving Hillsong. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people around you. As you heard, we've got a bit of social media to have a comb through. We both are quite fans of some celebrity. So that episode will be coming to you as soon as possible. Thanks again for your time, your interest. You guys are the best. We'll talk soon. Bye.